Shawn Dygert, you are back, sir. How are you?
I'm really good. Really good. Things, my life over the last year has just been really awesome. And, there's been some really good things happen for me personally and with my family and professionally and other things. So it's been a really good year. The right word to use would be very blessed year. Yeah. I'm still learning what it's like to be married to a grandma.
How is that?
Well, it's really good. We're up to 12 grandkids as of last week.
Holy cow. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And one of the realities of being married to a grandma is you learn that geography is different.
Geography's different.
Geography's different.
What does that mean?
Well, my mother lives in Farmington, Utah.
Yeah.
And we went to visit my mom. And one of my boys and his family live in over by Montpelier, and another one lives in Rexburg. Well, the road from Farmington, Utah to Murphy, Idaho, typically goes through Tremont and Snowville, come up there by Burley, and come on home. No. The road for Farmington, Utah now goes through Montpelier and Rexburg to get to Murphy. And that's what happens when you let a grandma navigate your way home.
Oh, my God.
And so...
Yeah, that's
it's exciting.
My oldest is only 13, so I got some time until I engage those.
Yeah,
years.
well, I got to tell you too. This is funny because in the legislature, my wife's a treasurer for Hawaii County, and so with some legislators, they talk about that. I am not Representative Dygert. I'm Annette's husband.
Annette's husband.
She was actually testifying in Rev and Tax, and one of the other legislators referred to her as Representative Dygert. She goes, "No, I know him, but I'm not."
Oh my God!
And so I got grief about that. And then there was one bill that came through State Affairs that I was opposed to that my wife working with counties was for. Everybody knew I was opposed, and everybody knew she was for. And so that vote come out of committee, and I voted opposed. And that vote was taken on Valentine's Day.
Oh my!
And so
God, that's an awkward dinner.
As we're walking out of the committee meeting, people are going, "No Valentine's Day for you," they said. So we're left.
Oh my God!
One of the really good things about that is my wife and I have just celebrated 40 years of marriage here this last June, and it's hard to explain this, but I went to look for a gift to buy her at 40 years of marriage. I thought, how do you buy anything that represents what we've put together in our lives for 40 years? There's nothing I can buy or do that to explain or to signify what has happened with us, our family, and doing it, for 40 years. And so just very appreciative of everything she does and what she does. And what was really cool about that situation is, at our house, it was just business. She clearly articulated why she was for. I clearly articulated why I was against. And then we make the vote and we go next.
Man.
And so that was real. And it was interesting too, because I had a few people after that particular vote, they come out and they go, "Well, nobody really controls Representative Dygert, do they? Because his wife can't even make it." And I thought, well, that's a good thing to have known. And I'm going to articulate why I'm going to vote, and then go with it.
That, if I may, first off, congratulations. What did you get her, by the way? A card?
No,
I got her
didn't.
Gift card.
I didn't.
Gift card to Amazon.
No, we ended up settling on kind of joint buying some things for the house. And this is, my youngest son and his wife. He teaches wood shop out at Rimrock High School, and he does cabinetry work on the side. But they decided to change their names to Chip and Joanna Gaines, and they come in and they says, "Hey, we want to help you redo your house." And, my house is old, raised 4 boys in it. They did a good job of destroying it. And because you got to realize my 4 boys are all
grown.
And they're the tallest is like 6'6", and the shortest is like 6'4", and they're all over 200 pounds. And
you had a tall mailman, didn't you?
Oh boy. But when you got 2 6-foot, 200-pound kids running through the halls, and one slams the door in front of the other, and the other one hits it, the door doesn't survive. So, we're talking cracking door frames.
Yeah, my 8-year-old is 135 pounds. They're all supposed to be like 6'3", 6'4".
Oh, wait till they're high school and beasts and runner. And
yeah.
So they said, "Hey, let's help you fix your house." And I go, we'll help you paint the room. We go, all right. So we pull everything out. And then they said, well, why are things out? Let's do the floors. All right. So we pull all the floors out. And they says, hey, why the floors are up? There's that little island thing in the kitchen. Let's yank that out and redo some of the kitchen. All right. So it just kept going and going and going. And so.
Were you guys living there while they were doing all this? Like
well,
you're working on the subfloor, cooking with the like camping stove?
Yeah. You know, I really if I had a choice though, I would have just subfloor in our house. Obviously, this ain't going to go good to my wife. But the advantage, because I did, way back in the day, I did some remodeling and we had just subfloor.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I had my tools and things on there, and you know, you could do whatever you want there. And then you walk over and you got your concession stand in the kitchen, and you got your TV in there, and you have your shop in the living room, and that doesn't go over good with the rest of the family. But I'll tell you what, that was.
I gotta tell you, when I moved here, I had accumulated a shop in my former life. And when I moved here, that shop did not come with me. It went into storage, and I didn't know if that was kind of like the end, because I had moved into a newer house, which I'd never been in, right? So it's like there was nothing to fix, and there was no place for the shop, right? There was no place for the tools. So, and you know, I was getting ready recently. I was getting ready to gift my tools to my brother, who still lives there. He's in the Coast Guard, and a younger guy, and, you know, really handy. And I very fortunately get to move to a little hobby farm. Hobby farm. It's like acre and a half, older house, all these things to do. So my wife, literally the day we closed, she's like, I got you a ticket. You're going to get your tools. So my son and I fly down.
There you go.
I got this old like 20-year-old Nissan Frontier that's just sitting there. It's been sitting there for a while. Battery's dead, right?
Yep.
Loaded, like get the battery charged, get it turned on, go get it serviced, get everything loaded up with the tools. You drive back. It's hilarious because the truck can't go faster than like 75. So we're coming up from, Winnemucca, and, you know, everybody, the trucks are passing us. We can't, it's like, no air conditioning, you know, windows down, the whole bit. And finally we got back, and this was a real moment for me. There's a picture in my house where my oldest is under 1 year old, and he's on one of the baby carriers. Okay. I'm carrying him, and I'm building, because we had a very, very small house. I had made this thing that I called Cloffice, right? So we took we took a closet, pulled the doors off, and I made an office in the closet, right? So it's like I made a desk and built these cubbies, all of these different things. It's just putting a Band-Aid on the situation. And there's a picture of me with my son, who's like 10 months old, in the carrier, and I got a 12-volt DeWalt impact driver, right? And I'm like holding this piece up, and he's got his little, 10-year-old hand pushing on it. And it's like, tender little photo, right? Well, he's 13 now. And we recently built, we had some people coming over, and I was like, well, we need a big table, we're doing a pig roast. So I built this 12-foot long redwood table, right? And, and he was old enough. I was like, hey, come help. Like, this is the project we're doing after dinner. So I gave him the same drill that he was using in that picture. I was like, this is your drill. Hold on. Don't put this down. Don't second you put the drill down, you're going to forget all these things. And it's just this beautiful experience of like, okay, I have a space now where I can share this with them again, right? Like we can do these things. So we built this big, beautiful table. And then my 11-year-old, of course, wants to build something. So we take the scrap wood and build this kid size Adirondack chair the next day, and had to take these 2x6s and rip them down to like, 1x3s for the slats, all these. And it's, God bless it, man. It's sharing that kind of stuff, having the ability to do it. It was really, really a thing for me.
And I think that's one of the things people are missing out on now when they don't do those kind of things with their kids. So now we're doing this sort of remodel, but we did some paint on the walls, obviously. And so everything's out of the way, floors up, everything's Well, so my son and his wife are giving their 3-year-old a paintbrush and say, you paint this part of the wall. You know how that goes when 3-year-old's painting. Yeah. Paint on him, on his clothes, whatever. See,
but it's subfloor,
that
right?
wasn't the lesson. The lesson was get your 3-year-old as part of the process. Right. Let him do some of the painting.
Right.
So he's part of the family. He's part of the building. It's hard to explain what that is. And I got talking to somebody about this the other day, and it was, and one of the things that I've kind of tried to explain is there's a lot of things we can do that is just fun.
Right.
You go to Roaring Springs, it's fun. I go golf, it's fun. The instant I walk off the golf course, it's over. But when I build things, and when I make things, and when I serve people, and I do those things, all of a sudden now that is real. those are some satisfaction things that I have in my life that no matter what cannot be taken away anymore. It doesn't matter what people say or what they want to ridicule or what they do. They can't take those positive things away from me on the good things that I've been able to do and build. And obviously I've made mistakes like everybody else, but it's hard to explain that. It's hard to explain that. And you talk to people that are very happy and content and good with themselves and have good self-esteem. I think it's based on the fact that they're building, they're achieving, they're serving, they're doing all those kinds of things rather than relying on what's the last fun thing I got to do.
Yeah.
To create their self-worth or whatever it is.
Yeah. And I think, like I just told you, I celebrated recently the 3-year mark for the podcast.
Right.
And I sent that to somebody, and somebody, high up in the state, has done a lot of shows. And he was like, man, what you've built is really incredible. And again, I usually think of tangible things like this desk or this studio or whatever it is. But there's also, I think as long as you're building to something, right? You're going in a direction. Like there's no physical piece of this podcast, but there is a building of community that's developed around it, and a building of authenticity and integrity, right? Like that's probably one of the biggest pieces of this show. Convincing people that this show was not just, over the years, it's like, no, there's integrity here. I'm not going to change your words. I'm not going to run sensationalistic clips. I don't have an agenda where I'm trying to get you to say something that it's like, oh, like hopefully he slips and I'm going to take that piece of it. Like that's a really important thing. And building towards that, right? Having a vision of what you want, be it a physical or metaphysical thing, building a career that you're proud of, or just building a community. These are all things that I think, to your point, that you can rely on, that aren't these one-off, like tasty little chips. It's like, great, I got a chip and it's great. And like, we move on.
Yeah, move on. Yeah. And I've been retired from teaching for just over a year now. And every so often, my old teacher partner, who's at Melba now, he calls me in to help. And because I worked with the guy for 30 years, so he knows my specialties. I know his. If roles reversed, I'd be calling him. And it is a lot of fun to go sit and work with them kids. And which actually way more fun now is the fact that I don't have to jump all those hoops.
You get to show up and have all the fun.
Have all the fun.
None of the obligation.
None of the obligation. But in fact, I got my book here. In my bookmark, it's actually a thank you letter from a student that just graduated from college that reached out and sent a thank you letter and said, thanks for the influence that you've had on me, that's past high school, and so there's those things, and some of that's coming around, and I don't know how you explain that to people, or they have to experience that. You've interviewed a lot of people that are involved in all the community service aspects, and in charities and 501c and all those things, and they're not getting paid. They're not getting nothing out of it, but they show up every day, year after year, because of what it does to build them. Building other people is part of the way they build themselves. And that's not shallow. That's not superficial. That's very real, and it's very lasting for a lifetime kind of things to do.
Yeah, man. Building community. That I think that's one thing that, I appreciate so much about the culture of this state is really that emphasis. It's like build the community. Like if everybody wins, right? And you had I heard stories about the way Eagle used to be. Like in the 90s, and they'd like have the paint the town day where people would show up downtown. When I found out about that, I thought it was the craziest thing. I was like, wait a minute, these are privately owned commercial buildings, right? It's like whatever. Yeah. It's like not huge, but like it's like the bank or something, or it's like the restaurant. And people would show up and participate in helping maintain those privately owned assets because it was their downtown, right? It was their restaurant that they went to. And if that restaurant struggled or went out of business, their restaurant was gone. The community's restaurant was gone. And I love that, right? Like I love having somewhere to invest, a community to invest in. When I moved here, man, and I obviously left all my community behind. Not having a community to invest in was one of the darkest things that I had ever been. Because I mean, not just professionally. I had a community of students and families, and that was my entire life, being a teacher and helping these people, right? And I would get a hold of the high schools. I'm like, hey, I don't know how you determine who they are, but if you have kids that don't have the money to do this, that want to go to college to do SAT prep, send them my way. And you determine how they are. Don't even tell me, right? And it turned out that they'd figured out like who had applied for like SAT waivers, to waiver the $50 fee, and they, selected those students. So but like I could invest in those students. I could give of myself in that way, and it was appreciated. It was received. It was positive. Good things happened. Losing that initially when I was here, I was like, oh God, who am I valuable for? Where do I go? Who do I help? And, obviously I've since kind of worked that out, but man, I love that aspect of this state.
Yeah. And that's, when I retired from teaching and I got talking to some of my seniors, and I said, we're in the same boat right now, don't you? And they says, well, what do you mean? They says, you're graduating high school. You're going to be leaving home. You're moving. I'm moving out of my profession into retirement. We both have to reinvent ourselves to a large degree on where we're going to go next. And they go, well, yeah, I never thought of it that way. I go, yeah, we're in the same boat in a large degree. So,
yeah, man,
so that's kind of the reason I've got into some things I have and worked on. And Idaho is such an awesome place. I actually spent some time this summer getting around the state and going places and seeing things. That's one of the things about being a state legislator. They'll show you things that as groups and take you on tours. And I'm starting to refer to it as the miracle of Idaho. We have the INL lab where they come from around the world because we have the best test reactor there is in the world sitting out in the desert of Idaho. And they employ everybody of every skill and every level. And one of the great things I saw there, and this is because I'm a CTE guy, and so they took me into their shop where they build things, and they have CNC machines, and they've got, their mechanics and build stuff. Well, they have to put their engineers and their PhD and their physicists in the room with those guys to build parts that don't exist yet. You just don't order one off of Amazon to fix your reactor. Right. And so they build them, they design them, they make them, they create them. I thought, this is the awesomest thing in the world to be able to have that here in Idaho. Then, and I've been really focusing on a lot of water this summer, trying to get clued in and educated on water. Because in District 23, which is where I'm at, we have over 100 miles of Snake River in District 23. Every drop of water that's in the river south of Boise and Nampa and all the way to Oregon flows out of the rocks of Thousand Springs. None of it is pass-through water because we dry up the river at Milner every year. So that aquifer in eastern Idaho is very, very important to everybody on this side of the state. And they may not say that, but it is. So I'm going to pay attention and work on that. And, we got to start thinking of these things in 50-year, 100-year kind of goals. And then I was in northern Idaho last week. My wife had a conference up there in Lewiston. So I just got in the car and drove around. The miracle of the Palouse and the grain growing and the garbanzo beans and the lentils and all those things are going over there. The canola, it's just amazing, and they're in the middle of harvest up there. They're kind of tailing off on getting done with wheat. They haven't started the garbanzos.
Yeah.
But it's just such a miracle of everything we have. And unfortunately, people are finding out. But
yeah, I for the first time saw canola fields when a few months back. I think it was May. And they're all yellow.
Yep.
I'm driving up. I was driving up to Winchester and going through this area. I was like, where am I? Like, how did this, like, what is, I didn't even know what it was.
Yeah.
Right. I just knew there were these, I thought it was like mustard seed or something. I was like,
well, it is. It's a mustard seed.
Oh, yeah, I had no idea. There you go.
Canola is in the mustard family.
Oh, then I'm not as dumb as I thought.
It's in the mustard family. And just because I'm an ag teacher nerd, if you want to get into the mustard, anytime you see a plant, you look at the flower and it has 4 petals on the flower, it's a mustard.
Gotcha.
And it's a giant plant family.
And
weeds and crops, and it's a giant plant family. So there's lots, and a very beneficial one.
Yeah, it was just understanding, seeing that with my own 2 eyes, and really starting to understand the depth of variety of the state and how incredible it is. I even found out they don't even use irrigation up there. It's just all rainwater.
Oh yeah, it's all rain, which is a unique deal too, because we get in the legislature, everybody in the north, you start talking about irrigation and water management and all those things we're doing here. They're going, what are you even talking about?
Right.
You know, so then you get into southern Idaho, and it's the lifeblood of southern Idaho.
Right.
And everything revolves around that aquifer and the river.
Right. I recently had Director Wagner from INL on, and incredible conversation. Really enjoy him. And I'm doing a big nuclear series on, had Congressman Mike Simpson on as well. There's from on high, man, there's orders like, dude, get the nuclear rolling.
Get it rolling.
Like, let's go. And in talking to people, I did a big INL tour, which was fantastic.
It's awesome to go through that here.
Man, when you look down, did you look down into that cooling pool?
Oh, yeah.
With the cores that
had
that purple Corona?
Oh, yeah.
I was like, holy God, here we are. And the understanding, hearing, as I went through, obviously, they put me on this big 2-day thing, and hearing about the experiences that people had. There was one experience that with one of their really skilled nuclear techs, that this gal was working in the cafeteria originally, and they had these, for some reason they brought her, they're like, hey, why don't you come over and check out this arm, right? So they had this, and she started using, they're like, hey man, you're not really bad at this. Like, why don't you, we're hiring for this. So this is a gal literally working in the cafeteria at INL. And she goes from working in the cafeteria to getting a job as a nuclear tech. And 10 years later, she's one of the most skilled nuclear techs at INL. Now, this is a person who did not have a college degree, did not have specialized training previously. And they hired her, and she, I don't know what her income was specifically, but I guarantee it's like double or triple what it originally was. There has to be a way. And this is an idea that I really want to pitch to INL and the State Department of Ed. It's like, listen, help me do shows with pick the 6 most needed people at INL and pick a range of education backgrounds. So the person who just has a high school diploma all the way to the nuclear engineer who's a PhD. And let's talk to these people and understand how they got here, what they do, what the benefits of these jobs are, and help pump those. Let's take that series, just 6, and put it directly into every single high school physics class or chemistry class in the state of Idaho, and have it be so that the students could watch it on Instagram. The students can listen to it on Apple Podcasts. They listen to it on the way, and they could see themselves and understand that there's a place for them at INL. There's a place in the coming history of nuclear that we haven't experienced yet that needs them, because that's how INL was built. It was a bunch of Idaho farmers and ranchers that came out and built these labs, and then they became some of the first employees.
Well, and now you're going down the road that I've said about school and education for a long time, but where I was a CT and an agriculture teacher, I would tell kids, if I can't tell you why I'm teaching it to you, I'm not going to teach it. If I can't show you why you need to know this, and the answer cannot be because you need it for college or
just because, right?
If I can't show you,
why am I learning this math? Because math.
Yeah. Well, and it was interesting because I had a young lady. She, she went to Boise State. I'm an Idaho Vandal and Utah State Aggie, but went to Boise State. And she comes into my office one day to visit, and she starts doing random calculus on my whiteboard. And I says, "What are you doing?" She says, "Well, I'm practicing my calculus on this." I go, "Why are you doing your calculus?" Because this is how we predict the markets on the flow of energy for oil and natural gas. See, she knew why she was doing the calculus. See, but a lot of times, especially in our high school and introductory college classes, we're not explaining why you need to know what you're teaching you. And there are the whys.
Oh, I did a tour of Idaho Power's load servicing operation recently.
That's something else, huh?
Dude, and they understanding that they're doing those types of things. They're trading energy by the second. And there are cases where they're explaining, they're like, listen, there are times when there's a glut of power in the Pacific Northwest and they have so much power, they literally pay us to take the power. So they get paid like $20 a megawatt. Idaho Power gets paid $20 a megawatt to take the power. They're like, we just charge our batteries because they have about I don't know how many hundreds of megawatts of batteries, but they have let's say 400 megawatts of batteries. They're like, we take it and then we sell it back to them later when they're buying it, like $70. I'm like, so you get paid to take it, and then you get paid to give it back. They're like, yeah, it's awesome. And it's that kind of arbitrage and that kind of trading, and those kinds of calculations that allow Idaho in its current iteration to have very, very affordable power, because they're using it as a trading, like, again, they're not manipulating, but they're working the markets to successfully get money. So like every dollar they make in that type of thing, 95 cents of that goes back to the Idaho customer. How wild is that?
Oh yeah. Well, and you're back to, it's just part of the miracle of Idaho.
Yeah.
And it's an incredible place to be. And I know a lot of people are coming here, and it's changing how we got to manage things and how we got to do things. And I'm getting really good at identifying some problems. I don't know how to solve them yet. And I live on Highway 78, so a lot of people come out and recreate in Hawaii County. Well, 15 years ago, it was four-wheelers and small side-by-sides.
Sure.
Now it's these great big contraptions that they're, 4-seaters, 6-seaters. They're about the wheelbase of a truck. They got full-size mud tires on them, and they're flying up and down our Hawaii County roads. And we cannot keep up with the road maintenance with that kind of a vehicle that didn't exist and wasn't being used,
right?
10, 15, 20 years ago, whatever it is. And so we have a new problem now. Well, how do we handle that? Who should pay for that? Is that on the county? Is that on the state? Do we find a way to do a use fee? I mean, I don't know. I wish I knew. There's some of those things that's really hard, and it'd be really hard to figure that, because here's an Hawaii County guy coming over and saying, hey, help us out on our county roads. And people from everywhere else go, they're going to think, well, not really our problem.
Yeah, right. You got Representative Redmond up in Coeur d'Alene. He's like, I'm not talking to you about this right now.
Yeah,
this is not my problem.
Yeah, not my problem. And that was actually one of the things I learned in the legislature too. The number of things that are either regional, Eastern Idaho, Southwest Idaho, North Idaho, or South Idaho, North Idaho. And it's just because of their region and it's their constituents. I get it. So you have to find ways to work with those folks. And the other one was urban rural. I noticed the folks urban, getting them to think in terms of rural. Especially like right now, the cattle market's really, really good. Ranchers are doing really, really good this year. That means the dollars are going to be up from the cattle ranches. So you could probably go to Burley or some of those towns like that, and you can go to the car dealerships. They can tell you that the cattle market's up because they're going to be selling more pickups. They're going to sell pickups,
God bless it.
Well, because their choice is they can either pay Uncle Sam or they can reinvest in some of those. Right. And they've probably been putting that off for a long time because, things have been tough over a number of years.
Yeah. I toured a dairy recently, and they're like, man, it's like $1,400 for a calf.
It's unreal.
Unbelievable. He was like, same calf 2-3 years ago. It was like $150, $200, $300.
Oh yeah. And I remember days when they couldn't give them away.
Oh my God.
On those, but they're really changing their model too, because those dairies, used to just have dairy calves.
Yeah.
Well, now they're reinventing that, and they're having beef cross calves. So
interesting.
So they're breeding those heifers to beef bulls or cows that they know they're not going to keep a replacement out of. And technology's to the point now that if they want to invest, they can either implant embryos, so they know the exact genetics of what the offspring is going to be, or they can use sex semen. So dairies obviously want heifer calves,
right?
So they can have replacements. So.
And again, to be clear, sex semen is when you have one gendered semen. So you have a very, very high probability.
It's either an X or a Y.
Yeah, right. And could you imagine sorting that out? It's like grains of sand, like one here.
And I've seen where they do it, and I'm not quite up on how they do it.
But they do it somehow.
But they do it. And all you got to do is the companies that work on artificial insemination. And actually, and this might be a little inappropriate, but this is funny. But in the ag industry, artificial insemination has had the AI acronym forever. Okay, so now that has been stolen out of the ag world, and now it's artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
So I get into, listen to people or presentations, and they're going off on AI this, AI that. I go, in my mind, that's artificial insemination, and I have to transfer it into artificial intelligence because that was
Yeah, man, you got to come back to reality.
I got to come back to
the contemporary use of the word.
Yeah, and so I got to get back into it. But
Yeah.
that's just, we got changing landscapes. So,
Yeah.
but that's one of the ways they're working to try to be profitable, because milk can be tough to make money with.
Yeah, and the markets around milk, even potatoes and things of that nature. I was going to have Galen Lee in recently, and something happened. We had it lined up, and then he's going to come back. But the futures for crops like potatoes, how they're like, potatoes are just getting obliterated right now. So is sugar. And so literally they're taking these potato crops that they've grown, and eventually it comes to a point where it's not economical to try to deliver them to market, and they end up feeding them to cattle.
To cattle.
It's like, wait, you grew human food, and now you're just like throwing, they're like, yeah, man, the cows love it.
They do. And it's actually can be a pretty good feed.
Yeah.
It can be, but it doesn't pay you back for what it costs to grow.
Right.
That doesn't pencil. So,
the risks that the Idaho farmers and ranchers have to take just seem so astronomical and insane. Not knowing how things are going to pan out across the country, you gotta the whole argument that you have these farmers that are just doing these monocrop things, blah blah blah.
Yep.
It's my understanding now, having talked to it, they're like, look, we don't do that just because of the risk involved. Right? Like if we go monocrop and it's a bad year for that crop, it's going to be an atrocious financial decision. So like we have to diversify our risk plus our water consumption, right?
Right.
Potatoes take something like 26 inches an acre or something.
Yeah, whatever it is. Yeah.
Right. And it's like people are being allotted only about 18 or 19 inches an acre. So it's like you got to mix that up with crops that are like 13, 14. And just like you got a 4-year rolling average of water consumption. Yeah. Like, man, it's too much.
Well, see, and that's one of those things that drives me crazy too, because I have literally had people lecturing me or trying to get after me about the price of milk. They go to the store, they say, milk's too expensive, it's too expensive. While they're holding a $7 or $8 cup of coffee that they waited 30 minutes in line for.
What do you mean?
Yeah. And I'm going, how do you not connect this?
Or they got their bottle of water that's literally, it's something like $14 a gallon for, one of the,
Yeah, bottled water. And then, we have the big argument about whether we should be using glyphosate or not. And obviously, it's very responsible. It's a very good product. But I have had people lecturing about the use of Roundup or glyphosate while they're drinking a Red Bull energy drink. I go, am I missing something here?
I think what you're articulating is the essentially compartmentalized rational perspective that people have. Right. So in one box, they see large corporate farming mechanisms like glyphosate or monocrop. There's like, okay, this is bad, right? Or this is something that's happening and it's all bad, right? But that's totally compartmentalized from this other one over here, which is like, no, I don't even consider, the Doritos I'm eating or like the Red Bull or whatever it is. Like, what one I've been really struggling with. I was telling a friend just this morning, and this is something that's weighing really, really heavily on me. And I don't know the way out of this one. With mineral utilization in the United States. And I don't mean mineral extraction. I mean mineral utilization. The glass on our iPhones, right, has antimony in it. The bullet casing that the U.S. military use have antimony. The pin has antimony, right? All of these things we utilize, let's just use antimony in the United States. All right, that's a fact, and you can't get away from I can't exist in my life without it. Now, China owns our antimony supplies.
Yeah.
Okay, so we get it from them. They cut off all military grade antimony exporting in 21, and they cut off all antimony completely in 2024. Okay, hence, tariffs, but we don't have to get into that. My point is, we have an antimony store in the state of Idaho, up in the Stibnite, right? Stibnite mine is the antimony that we need for munitions. Now, here's the problem. We have EPA standards and we have environmental groups that don't want mining. Okay, great. And we can look at the horrible decisions that mining companies made in the past. Nobody's denying it, right? Like we had really bad practices. By the way, we had really bad oil practices and stuff in the past too. Like we've done a lot of bad things.
Well, you hope we've learned.
But here's my problem. I don't understand how somebody could argue against mining antimony in the state of Idaho or in the United States and still consume things that require that mineral? Because if we're really environmentalists, then do we care about our backyard or do we care about the earth? If we're really humanitarians, we're like, listen, man, you can't use a 6-year-old to mine antimony in Idaho. You can't use the 6-year-old. We don't believe in using 6-year-olds, but they don't care in the Congo. So
no, they don't know.
What if we deny mining minerals here and we engage in consumption of minerals off the back of the 6-year-old whose country is getting destroyed? How do we do that? It's almost like, as backwards as this seems, it's like the real solution is to get mining companies here and make them adhere to the most rigid humanitarian and environmental solutions possible. But like, I don't know if that's right. Like, I can't wrap my head around this one.
Well, and this is something that I hope we move the ball forward down in the legislature. And this is the things that I think that I really enjoyed about being in the legislature, by the way, is when we dealt
you
with
seem so positive about it. Yeah. You were happy during the session.
I was.
You were happy before it. Like, I thought I was going to see you and you're like, oh my God. You're like, this is great.
Well,
people are so nice.
The things that are really, really important that we dealt with,
right,
that'll never be in the news and never make it on the social media and never be out there. So, you know, you talk about Idaho mining. We got the phosphate mines over in eastern Idaho that are just vital. We're one of the best spots in the world for phosphates, and they go into a lot of stuff, not just glyphosate.
May I ask what's the company doing the phosphate mining?
There's two of them. Simplot's doing it, and Bear Crop Sciences is doing it.
Bear Crop Science?
Yeah, Bear.
And Simplot. Okay.
Yeah, and Simplot.
Okay, keep going.
And then you've got the antimony, and then this is big for me because it's out in White County. There's a company that's wants to remine disturbed sites from back in the day that was mined, and they want to remine it. Okay. One of the things we passed, and actually I had to laugh because we was having a long day and you know, my high school dad humor and nonsense, you know, and the legislation was so we would make it possible for these companies as they come into these sites and they're finding old mine sites. And you talked about the sins of the past. So they are allowed to clean them up without necessarily taking on additional risk. They want to fix this, and they're doing this voluntarily. They came to us and said, hey, we want to make this so we can fix some of the sins of the past, of the late 1800s, early 1900s, you know, where they didn't know better or didn't care, whatever it was. And so they're bringing this forward, and I'm walking in and I'm kind of tired and punchy. So I started in all the stupid puns, you know, well, we'll drill down on this and see what we can find. There's got to be a gem in here somewhere.
Oh my God.
You know, and then the other guys started going in on it, and the guys with the mining, they're going, really?
Yeah. It's been a long day, sir.
It's been a long day, guys.
Yeah.
and
that's one of the things that it's like, that's one path forward, which is to say, hey, look, we got this horrible glaring thing here. We got an old mine site that's leaking 1 ton of arsenic in the river every single year. Yeah. That's terrible. Now, mind you, ain't no money anywhere to fix this. Right. So this is going to continue on forever unless somebody comes in and fix it. And then you have a company that comes and says, hey, I will fix that. I'll improve what it is.
Right.
And then all I want in return is the ability to, one, never reproduce that. I don't want to ever reproduce that. And we're going to make fish passage. We're going to do all these things. But we live in a capitalistic society. We need access to the resources, and we will adhere to whatever regulation you want, and we'll make everything better. But then it's like, yeah, you can't.
But that never made it on the news, did it?
No. I'm trying to help you out here, though.
Well, right. We're helping.
Like, here we go.
But when you sit and talk to folks, so like one of the bills I carried too, and I really was pleased to do it, the alfalfa seed growers came and said, we need to up our assessment in our commission. And all we're doing is giving grower groups authority to basically tax themselves.
Sure.
Okay. And people lost their minds. I couldn't believe the opposition. And for my district 23, the growers came to me and they said they think well over 80% of Idaho's alfalfa seed is grown in my district.
Wow.
South Nampa, South Ada County, and some in White County. You know, Caney County is just a big alfalfa seed.
Yeah.
Anyway, so and they said, we want to tax ourselves because they need to take that money, partner with the University of Idaho. They need to do research mostly on insecticides because the companies don't do the research because they're such a small crop. So they have to apply to the EPA to get it approved to be used on their alfalfa seed.
And they need the research, and then they need to fund the research.
Right. So it allows them to pull their money and tax it on a on that basis. And people say, well, that's going to increase, that's like a tax. Everybody's going to, the consumer will say, I go, you got to understand, people in agriculture are not price setters. They're price takers.
Right.
Whatever the market says is what the market is.
What they're doing is they're pinching their own margins.
They're pinching their own margins because they do. And alfalfa seed's unique because they have to have what's called leaf cutter bees, because they have to be able to open up the flower a little bit so the pollen to get in there, so they have hypersensitive viable seed of fertilized seed.
Are leaf cutter bees prevalent in this area?
They have. If you drive out and see an alfalfa field and you see what looks like portable boxes out there, big trailer boxes, those are leaf cutter bees.
Gotcha.
And they have to take care of them, and they have their own bee boards and they put them together, and they
That's wild.
See, so that's their deal, and I couldn't believe how people go, well, that's a terrible thing to do, and I go, really? The growers came to us.
But Shawn, isn't this one of the things that you're like, this is a perfect example of when you and I first met, I think it was March of 24. You came in and it was before the primary, right? And, and you came in and you were talking about running and why you want to run. You're like, look, my position is that I'm going to sit down with you. If you don't like something I've done, I'm going to sit down with you. I'm going to explain it. You don't have to agree, but I want you to understand my reasoning, my thoughts, and we'll go from there. And this type of thing, exactly what you're talking about, which is like, hey man, sit down for a second. The members of the association wanted this so that they can, X, Y, and Z. All of that makes sense. But at the end of the day, all somebody has to do is say, Representative Dygert voted to, increase taxes on our growers. Like he's trying to kill the alfalfa market by the growers are like, wait a minute, that's not true. You're like, wait a minute, they asked me to do this. Like the bill was sponsored by them. Like, all of those things. Right. It's this type of stuff where it's like, we need more people understanding the nuance and difficult navigation that people are engaging in when they're coming up with different policies.
Well, and that's one of the good things about the Idaho legislature, though. And you say being positive, one of the things I really did enjoy is the majority of the folks I got to sit down with and talk with are just honest people trying to make a difference. And we have a situation in the Capitol building where if you have a little bit of manners, you can sit down with your representative and your senator, and it's pretty easy.
Just a little bit of manners. Just be polite.
Just all
try to be polite.
And then sit down, and you can go back and forth. And there was a lot of times I had a lot of questions, especially in the areas that weren't my wheelhouse. A lot of questions, and they'd say, "Well, what do you think you're going to do?" And I go, "I don't know yet," because I wanted to vet a few more things out before I got done. And that's actually one of the real challenges too, and I'm the type of person, I enjoy challenges. When things are hard, things are, to me, are worth doing when it's hard.
Right. And nobody was ever proud that they sat on the couch and ate potato chips.
Correct. Right. But trying to figure out in a bill and some legislation, and there's a lot of legislation, and you can go through and you look at the votes on them. When it's a 50-10 or it's a 55-5 or 48, everybody, that's an easy one. When you see the votes of 38 or 32, you start seeing 30s and 30s. People are really struggling in their mind, and I see that with a lot of folks. They're really struggling, and the point comes: at what point in this legislation am I for it, and at what point am I against? And that's a tough one on some of them. That's a tough one on some, and I did have to laugh. There's another representative, and he's in this construction deal, and the bill is to loosen up the regulations on who are the people that are interning in electricity, not journeymen, they're interns.
Oh, yeah,
whichever you want to call them. Anyway, well, the journeyman is supposed to stay on site as those guys are working, to loosen it up so the journeyman can make it to multiple sites and still have those guys working. They're still being supervised. And I says, well, I don't have trouble with that, because one of my jobs in high school was, in college, was remodeling dairy barns. So I've been that guy that they leave, and you're not connecting wires. You're not doing, But what you're doing is you're running conduit or you're running Romex you're doing all that kind of stuff. And the journeyman's
drilling holes.
Drilling holes.
Yeah,
I go, and the guy says, well, I want to, and he was in the construction industry, said, well, don't do it. Don't do it. And I go, I've been that guy that's been left alone. I don't know what the trouble is as long as they're not the ones doing all the connecting and the journeyman's on the hook.
Right.
Because if they screw up,
the journeyman's on the hook.
The journeyman's on the hook, and they're not going to get paid for it. They're going to have to
fix it,
tear it out, redo it, And so, it was, well, we kind of laughed and joked about that a little bit, but those are the things he was obviously opposed and I was for. And, and that's fine.
What happened to that one?
I think it passed in the House and stalled in the Senate, if I remember right.
Well, he got you on that one.
Yeah, well, and that's okay. That's okay, because you think about this stuff isn't necessarily supposed to be easy.
Yeah, and what you just said, hey, look, it's okay. There was a time when I was looking at some of the bills that were going through, and it's like or even talking to Representative Chris Mathias.
Right.
Really enjoy that guy. He in one of his shows, he was like, listen, man, I'm a super minority and you got to take a lot of L's. And he was like, I'm always reaching across the aisle trying to, he's like, but you win one or two, you lose a lot, and you just fight another day, right? That was the thing. And I was like, God, man, what a great perspective that it's like, yeah man, you're going to lose a lot, but that's okay.
Well, and I really respect Representative Mathias, and obviously we vote a lot different.
Sure.
And we're on the opposite sides of the aisle. And
sure.
But we talked about that denial of attendance bill that I brought that I got through, that kids with criminal convictions that got through. Well, he had a piece that he was going to add on that, and it's unfortunate this was the situation, but and his name was on it, but he says, I need you to run with it. And it was kids that are up for expulsion that are withdrawn. So if they're withdrawn in lieu of discipline now,
that goes on the record.
That goes.
That's right. So it's not like I'm about to be expelled, I withdraw, and there's nothing on my record. Right. I go to the next school and they're like, well, he has a clean record. Yeah, right.
Yeah, and so that could fall on. But he says, you're going to have to take that, because since I got the D by my name, it'll be tough. If you take it, it'll be good. And we got it clear through. It got signed into law. I think there was one opposing vote in the whole process, and so I'm thinking that's unfortunate, because his idea was right on. His idea was right on. And so if I wouldn't have been willing to talk to him,
you wouldn't have got that piece.
Never got that piece in, and it was a really good piece. And it also built support across the aisle that obviously I would want too. And and it did. So, those things are important. You're back to, you need to talk to people and work with people. And you're right. When you win, you win. When you lose, you lose. And it's amazing too, because it's, I've had people criticize, they worry about when a chairman puts something in their desk, put it in the drawer and just hold on to it, won't bring it up for a hearing in the committee. Well, when it's a bill that you want out, you think that's a horrible rule. When it's one you think needs to never see the light of day, you think it's a great rule.
Hold on, baby.
Yeah, you're also going, no, that's a great rule. And so you can't have it both ways.
You got to pick one.
Be consistent in your train of thought, right.
God bless it. That's hilarious.
And so and we actually did, there's some water legislation in the resource committee, and the chairman was holding on to it for a while. And some of us, we signed a letter, and all the letter requested is that it come out. No ultimatum, no threat, no nothing. Just please let this come out.
Yeah.
And some other pieces came into place, and some things that made it so he felt comfortable, and then it came out, and then it got dealt with, and it was good. See, but I don't know about you, but when you're in a building and you're in a building full of type A personalities, two things that don't go over with anybody that I've met in there. One, ultimatums. You give somebody an ultimatum, it's like, okay, now they're on the fight right away. It's, make me, okay. Yeah, right. And then, number two, any kind of a threat, and there's folks that think that's going to work. That doesn't work.
Right. I went down to the Capitol quite a few times, obviously not like you, but I went down a few times to, either testify or see some, and, man, people are moving fast. There's a lot of
stuff going. Yep.
It's interesting though, to your point about Chris, it there's anxiety, I think, with a lot of people in the state about, or even within the nation, but let's look at Idaho, that things are so partisan. And it's like, there's a lot more bipartisan work happening than people recognize. Your case perfectly articulates it, which is, no, we modified the bill to add something that, he wanted in there. So you have this bipartisan work, and then everybody liked the bill. So the idea wasn't bad.
Right.
You had to play a little optics with like, is it an R or a D or whatever? But those types of things, it's like there is good work going on, even though at surface level you see like, okay, only the bills with R's pass. It's like, yeah, but that doesn't mean those bills were only made by the R's.
Yep. And it's fun to be part of that process, actually, when it's going on in a honest manner, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that about a lot of the colleagues I have in there. That is part of and we all have, our backgrounds and where we came from. And, and I like to think I want to try to be to a point as I want to look at things as objectively as I can. And, and I'm pretty conservative on things, but a good idea is a good idea. When it's the right thing to do, it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, right.
And so try to follow down
and
that particular path.
There were so many of those. There were so many things that that were pragmatic, that never saw the light of day, that were just good ideas.
Yep.
And seeing those come through, like at once it was kind of horrifying seeing how like the sausage gets made, but at the same time it's like, wow, that's really cool. Like this actually does work. Or the things people were grappling with, like water or funding wildfire, the 911 system revamping, or like little nuances and all the different, again, a bunch of different areas where like, okay, like things are actually happening. I'll never hear about them, or the average person would never hear about them. I hear about them because I'm like, oh my God, I get to talk to people about this. This is great. But there is functionality there, right? I think that's the big point, that it's like, no, things are working. You just, you don't know they're working unless you actually go down to the Capitol and see it or hear it.
Well, and realize, we're all people, and we actually have quite a sense of humor on a lot of things. Well, there was I was going to promote some bills, and Representative Monks actually said he would help me out on one, but because I got in trouble because I didn't answer my wife's text in a timely manner.
What?
And so I go, we need to pass a bill that while we're in session, we have immunity from answering wife's text in a timely manner. And they're going, nobody wants to ever go on record of voting on that one. And so, things like, and I get told things I need to work on. So when the representatives that sit in front of me stand and are debating, and I'm in the background, I got caught eating on the floor one day. Yeah. Well, my go-to is them iced circus crackers.
Oh my God, they're so good.
Oh, they're so good. That's my go-to.
Crackers.
Oh yeah. Anyway, and so, later on the session, was pretty funny too. Later on the session, we did suspend the rule that allows us to have snacks and drink on the floor.
You suspended it?
We suspended the rule. Well, what was funny is Speaker Moyle's about to call for the vote on that one. I won't know if I throw him in. Yeah, a representative popped a soda, big old on the floor, and the acoustics in there are really good. So we all, it was hilarious. And,
oh my gosh.
You talk about things you want to change. One thing I want to change in state affairs. I'm on the state affairs committee. I sit on the opposite sides of the room from the media table. So whenever we have those big days where the media is there and they set up the cameras, whenever they film people testifying, I'm in the background. And then I
change your seat.
Well, no, I don't need to change my seat. I says, let's just move them to the other side of the room. So the other side of the room is in the background. And then my wife tells me I got to work on my poker face because people will say things, and
you're like, oh my God, can't believe that.
Well, I can't, I did because I'm going, jaw drop. I can't believe you just said that. We had one, it was on consent, and I'm thinking, why are we dealing with this? It was consent agendas are in municipalities, cities, counties, whatever, that, and standard regular rules of Robert's Order say, if there's things like that, and they're all unrelated, a single member can pull anything out that's not related. And I thought, well, yeah, everybody does that already. And they go, no. Well, the guy from a city gets up there and he says, We don't need this. We can run our meeting. We're fine. We're good. And you got to ask the question, well, do you have an adopted set of rules to run your meeting? Nope. And we don't need one. And we're not going to have one. And I go, now I see why we're having to deal with that. Now I
do you
get
have
it.
rules? Nope. It works just fine.
We're doing it. So a couple of you getting to decide what's going to be in that conglomerate of things you want. And, just a quick thing of what, when I was on the fair board at Hawaii County and I was chairman of the fair board, we just do consent to deal is pay the bills.
Yeah, right.
Okay. We didn't, do each bill individually. Well, there was twice that somebody says, hold on a minute, look at the water bill. Because Homedale water is pretty expensive. And we looked at it, all of a sudden we're going, whoa, it's like 5 times what the normal water bill should be for when the fairgrounds aren't running. And we got looking, and I think if I remember right, this is 15 years ago, but we had a neighbor that had run a hose to one of our faucets and was using it. And then we had an underground leak that we had to chase down. See, but if a person doesn't pull that one item out and say, what's up with the water bill? We're not doing an investigation on why is our water bill high.
Yeah, right.
And that's not there's nothing nefarious about any of that. It's let's evaluate an individual piece when it's practical.
Right. Right. And again, you got to be pragmatic with that stuff.
Right.
Like the difficulty of taking all the little pieces into consideration. And again, I'm not elected anything. I'm not on a board of anything. Like I'm just a dude, but just talking to people going through it, it's like, holy cow, man. How do people pay attention to all these things?
Well, and it's tough. And I've been trying to do as much reading and researching and keeping up on things as I can. It's finding good folks that can help you and that'll call you. I talked to an individual that lives out in Hawaii County. He deals with the rural fire protection groups out there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, their money is really tough. And they do really good. He says the equipment's fine. We're okay on getting equipment. The problem is when we go on a fire, and they went out on a fire and they ended up going through 6 tires on one of their trucks or through all their trucks, because you're not out there, on pavement.
Right.
You're out in the rocks and, tough country. And so, but he says, putting a tire on a fire truck is like $1,200, $1,500 a tire, or whatever it is. It's really expensive. He goes, we don't know how to eat those expenses. We don't know how to keep diesel in the trucks. All those kinds of consumable expenses are what's eating them up.
Right.
Okay. Well, so now in my perception, the state has a vested interest in these rural fire protection deals on the BLM because everybody in the state is using those lands.
Right.
So a small group of people, just because they're grazing there, shouldn't be on the hook for all of it.
Right. Unless it's exclusive to them, which it is not.
And so, and they are chipping in and they're paying and doing their part. So, do we find ways to help them out?
Right.
And I frankly told him, he says, it's going to be really tough this next year because we already know that we're going to be under tight budget constraints. So
right.
trying to come up with something new for that kind of a deal is going to be tough because it's not going to be on a lot of people's radar. You're back to urban, rural. Urban folks aren't going to think that's
an important thing at all.
Yeah.
They're like, why are we dealing with this?
Yeah. And so trying to win that over, hopefully, or finding a spot where we can do some of those things.
Yeah. Shawn, listen, man, you and I obviously talked too long before we got rolling. And now I had some things I wanted to ask you. Like, well, I don't think we got to any of it, which is fantastic.
Well, shoot, or whatever you want.
Listen, we got to do this again, man. I always enjoy having you in here. Thank you for what you're doing for Idaho. I mean, obviously you were an educator for decades, and now you went into the legislature and bring that perspective. It's awesome to hear that you're also not like broken by it, jaded and frustrated. You've always been positive every time I talk to you, so that's awesome.
Well, and it's hard to explain, but if I hope I'm making a difference, and I try to think long term. I've been in one session. So that means I haven't built the relationships yet or had the experience or been able to deep dive and have the years of working with folks that know the ins and outs and nooks and crannies of all these different things. So my goal is to keep building on all of that, so that if I get to a point where years down the road and I am going to run for reelection again, but because then if I get a knowledge base that really allows me to help on those kinds of deals. And I'm not just lobbing random things out there to see where they land.
Right.
You know, and I view what I'm going to have to do this next session. I don't have any specific legislation myself I'm bringing at this point. It'll have to be for me to carry something, some industry or group or is going to have to come with me with a need. But I think I'm going to spend a lot of time defending attacks either on the rural life or on education or on different things. And so therefore that could be a full-time part, just holding par, especially where I think we're headed with what our budget's going to be for this next year. Holding par could be a huge win.
Let's do this. I know your time is valuable.
Oh,
I'd love to have you back out to talk about that stuff before the session.
Okay.
You know, and talk about education, talk about ag and rural areas, because especially funding for education, it's a big thing. And I want to chat with you about it today, but like I hate being rigid with these things. So listen, let's do it again. Thank you for coming out. We're going to rock it.
Okay, well, I appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun.